In this episode, I want to talk about some of the different ways to say to study or to learn. In English, we mostly just say to study or to learn. But in Russian, there are quite a few different ways to say it depending on whether it's long-term studying or major. So let's start. All right, so we've got our first verb, учиться, and no perfective, just the imperfective, учиться. Okay, so this means to study in the sense of to be a student or to attend some sort of school. So, учиться, an intransitive verb, which means it requires a preposition. So this will answer questions of где or как. So we'll use учиться, when we're talking about whether you go to school at all, and if so, where, what department, what year, and also what kind of student are you. So that's the как. We could ask someone, где вы учитесь? So where are you a student? And this person could answer в медицинском институте. Я учусь на втором курсе. Okay, so let's see, what do we have here? So we're answering the question, где, where? Or first we ask it, right? Где вы учитесь? Учитесь. Where do you study? So I know you're a student, where do you study? And they answer, and they use prepositions because it's an intransitive verb. So at the medical institute, and я учусь на, so I'm in my second year. And we can also ask that question or answer the question как, like what sort of student are you, right? So we could say моя сестра хорошо учится. Моя сестра хорошо учится. So my sister is a good student. So we can also use the same verb, but now either the imperfective or the perfective with an infinitive, and it will mean to learn to. So we'll go from studying to learning. So slightly different, right? Slightly different meaning. So we always also are going to use imperfective infinitives. So я учусь водить машину. So right now I'm learning how to drive a car. So we're using that imperfective infinitive, водить, because it's sort of this ongoing process of learning how to do something. Or we could ask someone, сколько тебе было лет, когда ты научился плавать? So how old were you when you learned to swim? How old were you when you learned to swim? Сколько тебе было лет, когда ты научился плавать? So how old were you when you learned how to swim? Okay, so let's look at another verb. To study. So заниматься. And again, we don't have a perfective version, we're just using the imperfective version. And this is to study, meaning day-to-day preparation for class. So doing homework, reading assignments, just anything that you would do day to day. And it's also intransitive, so it requires a preposition. And this answers the question, где? Right? So where do you study? And you'll use this when you're talking about how much time you spend preparing for class each day, or if you're telling someone where you prepare, like do you prefer to study at the library or at home, and when do you do it? Do you study right after school or in the evening? Anytime you're talking about these things, you're going to use заниматься. I could say, моя сестра любит заниматься в библиотеке. So, где она любит заниматься? В библиотеке. So we have our preposition because it's intransitive. On the other hand, my brother often stays up very late to finish his assignments. So, мой брат часто занимается ночью. Right? So my brother frequently does his homework late at night. Or in general, maybe you're just taking a hard class and you just say, я много занимаюсь. Right? So whenever you're talking about how much or where or when you do this preparation for lessons. If you use заниматься and you name the subject, you have to put that subject into the instrumental. So if you want to say, if you say, I study such and such, put the subject in the instrumental. So if we just wanted to say, он занимается бизнесом. So he's studying business. Alright, let's look at another verb. So here we've got two. We've got our imperfective and our perfective. Учить и выучить. And we use these to learn or study or memorize something specific. And then, so this is transitive. We would use these verbs as transitive verbs, which means we would require the direct object in accusative case. So, for example, Nina все утро учила русские слова. So let's say Nina has a test that day in Russian vocabulary, and so she spent the whole morning learning or memorizing these specific words. So we're not saying that she is studying the entire subject. She's not learning, for the next 15 years this subject, but just this morning for the specific amount of time she's focusing on this specific task. And if she's successful and she's memorized a bunch of her words, we could say это русские слова, которые она выучила. Right, so these are the words that she memorized. So if you want to say to memorize something by heart, like if you were to memorize a poem, and this is something that they talk about in your book, you would use this expression, vyuchit naizust. So to learn by heart, or to memorize by heart. So нам надо выучить наизусть стихи Pushkina, right? So we have to learn these verses by Pushkin by heart. We have to memorize them by heart. If you use uchit and nauchit, so a different perfective, if you use those two verbs with an infinitive, it now means to teach someone a skill. Okay, so instead of learning, now we're teaching, and our verb is slightly different. The perfective verb is different. The person being taught is in the accusative case, and the subject, the like academic subject or skill that's being taught, is in the dative case if it's a noun, or the infinitive. So let's see some examples of this to teach someone a skill. So we've got Отец учит дочери русскому языку. So our father is doing the teaching, and he's teaching his daughters, in the accusative case, a subject or a skill, Russian language, in the dative case. So let's say we see someone who can figure skate. I think this is an example in your book. Кто тебя научил фигурному катанию? So, who taught you figure skating, right? And then they could answer в школе нас учили фигурному катанию. So in school they taught us figure skating. Right, so we've got our accusative case for the person being taught, and our dative case for the skill that they're being taught. And here you see naучил, because you've learned it. It's complete. You can figure skate. And then here учили, right? So they were teaching us instead of they taught. They were teaching us figure skating. All right. Let's look at another verb. So this is изучать, and this means to study or to learn or to study a particular subject over a period of time. Right, so we're not just memorizing a couple facts or something, we're studying an entire field. And you'll use this verb, изучать, when you're talking about a subject studied in depth over a substantial period of time, so like a major or a minor in college, or maybe you're studying of Russian, right? It's going to take many years. So when you're focused on a large-ish field for a substantial period of time. So, я изучаю русский язык и литературу. And literature. So I include the literature so you can just see that it's transitive and we'll have the direct object in the accusative case. So the direct object is what we're studying. And then this verb or this phrase is used when we're saying to prepare or to study for an exam in a specific subject. So let's see. So готовиться, подготовиться к экзамену по in the dative case. So this is the academic subject is in the dative case. So if you're studying and preparing for a specific exam in a specific subject on a specific day, right? So мне надо готовиться к экзамену по физике. So I have to prepare for an exam in physics. And because of this, yeah, like we're familiar with the verb готовить, right? To prepare food, usually. So now we're preparing ся, meaning oneself. So to prepare oneself. So we're preparing ourselves for a specific exam in a certain subject. And if you just want to say colloquial, that you have, in a colloquial way, that you have a certain subject this semester, you could just say, this is just by the way, у меня химия, история и русский язык. В этом семестре. So this semester I have chemistry, history, and Russian language. And that's just a colloquial way to say like what subjects you're taking. So it seems like there are a lot of different ways to say to study and to learn, and there are, but they often share the same verbs and you're just changing the case. So it's good to get familiar with when to use which one. So if we're just preparing for a specific exam in a specific subject, that's pretty straightforward. We're just going to prepare, right? Подготовиться or готовиться к экзамену. If you want to say that you study a field, or if your major is something, then you would use изучать. And if you're teaching someone, you can use учить, научить, and the infinitive. So that would mean to teach someone a skill, and then you're going to use the dative case to identify that skill. You can use the same учить with a different perfective vyuchit to say to learn something or to memorize something very specific. So we're not talking about our major, but maybe specifically, studying the lines of a play or memorizing a poem. If you're just talking about doing your homework, if you just want to say I do my homework in a certain place or at a certain time, you would use заниматься. So that's just your day-to-day preparation for class, your homework and whatever reading assignments you've been given. And then if you just want to say that you are a student or you're a good student or that you're a student at such and such university, you'll use учиться.